Good evening and welcome back to Mystic Matters. We are the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce. Good evening, Tricia Walsh.
Good evening, Suzette.
Well, our second show here at this new studio. I just can't get over it. It smells so new.
I know, we're breaking it in. Slowly but surely, we are breaking in the new studio.
So we've got a little bit going on and we're gearing up for summer, the chamber.
As always, the summer comes and that is the busiest time for us.
Yes.
So we're always looking for volunteers that would be willing to help out with the Mystic Outdoor Art Festival, which is August 9th and 10th this year, 57th annual art festival.
Has it been 57 years?
Yes, since before you were born.
Not that much before I was born. Let's put it this way. I was out of diapers. But 57 years. Isn't that fantastic, Tricia? And it lines our streets of Mystic. Very proud of that event.
Exactly.
Very, very proud of that
And we're
event.
always looking for new people to come in and help out with a variety of jobs. And you can contact us at the chamber at 860-572-9578. And we're happy to take volunteers.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, we have a great volunteer party.
Oh, we do.
Oh, we do. So it is worth it. It's worth a free T-shirt. It's worth a volunteer party. I mean, so just if you want to be hanging out with the chamber and with all your friends in downtown Mystic, you got to volunteer. And you'll see us all there as well, hanging out too, and working.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we've got a great guest on this evening.
We do. We have very interesting. We have Greg Powell.
Welcome, Greg.
Thank you very much for having me.
Reforest the Tropics. And tell us a little bit, I think we should start out with, what is Reforest the Tropics?
Yes, so Reforest the Tropics is a local 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're based in Mystic on Cottrell Street, and we work to convert cattle pasture to new farm forests in Costa Rica for the purpose of long-term carbon sequestration.
Now, you understood that, right? Tricia? Yeah, okay. I know you did.
I did. I was going to say, can you explain to us, in your position, how you do that?
Sure, absolutely.
And in Costa Rica.
Yes, that's one of the perks of the,
Right.
of the job. So what we're trying to do, this is a climate change initiative. So we look for businesses and individuals to offset the emissions that they have, predominantly carbon emissions, by planting trees in the tropics. The reason why we plant in the tropics is because trees grow at least 10 times faster in that region as opposed to temperate zone forests. So when we plant in the tropics, within a few years we have a full forest cover that is actively sequestering carbon for the purpose of offsetting people's emissions.
So how does a small, in terms of businesses and the offset, for instance, Simply Majestic, Suzette has the jewelry store here, about how much carbon is she using that she would need to equal it?
I'm glad you asked that. That's actually
A great. I knew Tricia understood this.
That is actually the first step of our process when we
Right.
work with businesses of any size. So we have a basic form we call our CO2 inventory that we work with businesses to calculate their annual emissions. Once we do that, we can figure out exactly how many acres that we need to plant in order to offset those emissions. For a small business, it's a retail business, you would expect somewhere in the range of maybe 200 metric tons of carbon dioxide per year.
Sounds like an awful lot.
It does.
I mean, break that down for us, though. I mean, that sounds like.
What would she be using that's making?
It depends. I'm not familiar with that particular shop, but certainly electricity, any heating that you have.
Okay, that's what.
Any travel, if you have distribution or just employee travel, we would consider that as well as part of the calculations.
Okay.
So where does the money? So where do you get the money from?
Sure. So we do target businesses again of any size. We are entirely privately funded, and what we do is we try to educate businesses that not only is this something that's good for the planet, really, the environment, but also good for their businesses. So I can give you an example of that. Our largest owner, the Superior Nut Company based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, has recently achieved a very unique milestone of 100% carbon neutrality, strictly by planting forests in the tropics. This is the only business that we know of that's accomplished this feat. Now, as a result, and they promote this achievement on their product and on their website. And as a result, they've informed us that they've enjoyed record sales in the past few years. They've also received some fairly significant awards from Unilever, from Walmart, from the EPA. So they are recognizing that their investment in tropical forestry has actually been good for their business as well. We have found that the public is very eager to see more action on climate change. There was a study done by Stanford University recently that demonstrated that within Connecticut alone, 83% of the population believes in man-made climate change, and of that, 80% wants the government to step in and do something about this. Now, we can take that part out of it, sort of
what
eliminate
part, the government?
The government involvement, which can be a tricky political issue.
Right.
And have this be entirely privately funded by businesses that are looking to take advantage of the powerful marketing message of 100% carbon neutrality, 50% carbon neutrality, whatever the case may be. We found that the public responds to that, and as a result, ideally the investment in forests pays for itself through increased revenues.
Absolutely. So it's somewhat of a marketing campaign. So you're doing good, people see you doing good, and they want to support you for doing that.
Absolutely. The trends are pretty clear that the public is increasingly aware of this issue. They're demanding more action. We feel that in the future we'll probably see more regulation from government.
Well, as you grow, regulations have to be, unfortunately, and it's with any type of business or nonprofit.
Well, I think I'm talking about society at large, where businesses are going to be required to address their emissions. So, again, we're encouraging businesses to stay ahead of the curve, to take advantage of the positive PR that can result from this, and to do something very beneficial for the planet.
So how many acres have you actually preserved here?
To date, we have planted, we measure in hectares, it's 361 hectares, which is...
Did you get that, Tricia? Because we
at the math part.
Okay, yep, no, so I can that's...
when Tricia asked that question, well, she did the same thing I did. It's like, what does that mean?
What is a hectare?
Right.
So a hectare is 100 meters by 100 meters. So if you think of a football field, it's 100 yards, which is pretty equivalent. So the length of a football field squared would be 1 hectare.
Okay. And you've done how many of those?
361.
Wow.
So Reforest the Tropics has started out and has survived for many years as an applied research organization. We were established by our director, who's still working daily, in order to conduct forestry research for the purpose of carbon sequestration. He was actually invited by the EPA under the Clinton administration to submit a proposal for just that. The proposal was accepted by the United Nations. It's been formally approved by the EPA and the Costa Rican government. And through the research that Dr. Barris has conducted, he eventually came to the point where he realized he had a very strong model that could make a meaningful impact on the entire climate change equation. So in turn, I was hired, thankfully. And
thank God for a growing business, right?
And the idea is we now want to get our message out to businesses, saying that this works. This works for you, this works for the planet, and it's really necessary. I mean, there's a lot of sustainability initiatives out there that are focused on reducing our rate of emissions. So whether it be changing the light bulbs or reducing packaging, driving less, things like that, and those are all extremely important. But when we look at climate change, we still see that there's an excess of CO2 in the atmosphere that actually has to be pulled out, extracted from the atmosphere. So reducing our rate of emissions alone is not going to be sufficient in the long run if we're serious about climate change mitigation. As a result, forests present the best, most cost-effective method for doing just that. And again, we want to encourage all businesses to participate in this so they can be part of that solution.
So you mentioned that Costa Rica, because it's in the tropics, the trees grow faster and everything there. But is there a time you think where maybe you'll have taken up as much land as you can in Costa Rica and you might have to expand to some of the other areas? Is that a goal?
We certainly hope so.
Go from island hopping?
I think people would be surprised at the surplus of cattle pasture, which is basically land that's been deforested in the past. There was a study by Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute a few years back that estimated there's about 5 billion hectares of pasture land in the world. A lot of that's in Costa Rica. There was actually a government program from the 80s encouraging landowners to clear their forests for the purpose of cattle production. So there's a lot of surplus pasture land that we can work with in Costa Rica. Once we exhaust our planting options there, of course, we would look to expand to other countries. Costa Rica offers a very favorable site for us to work with because it is a bit more developed than some tropical countries. And Costa Rica has a very strong environmental reputation. So actually, as a country, they have established the goal of being entirely carbon neutral by the year 2021, which is an amazing
That's
goal.
not far.
No, it's right around the corner. So,
right around the corner.
and one of their great initiatives is forestry, reforestation.
So you've told us how many acres that you preserved. Now, how many is ongoing that you have now in preservation?
361.
Oh, okay. So it's a whole total
Yes, we look at this
ongoing process, I guess.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think that's the beauty of our model and what sets us apart is we look at our plantations, our forest plantations as permanent. I think that's one of the issues.
So it's a retention thing, constant.
We manage our forests throughout. We've never run into a point where we've stopped managing them. And we do that. We control grasses and vines and things like that to make sure, and ants, it can be a big problem, to make sure that the forests remain healthy and able to sequester carbon. I think one of the issues that has hampered reforestation in the past is people have planted a whole bunch of trees and walked away and sort of hoped for the best. That always doesn't work out. In many cases it does,
Right.
but so we take a very holistic approach where we make sure that we have a biologically sustainable and diverse forest that can support all forms of wildlife, that's beautiful to look at and walk in, and is doing its job in collecting carbon. Most important to our model, however, is the social and economic attention that we pay to our landowning partners in the tropics. So another issue that has hampered reforestation is when private land is forested, 10 years down the road, maybe the landowner decides they want to do something else with their land because the forest doesn't really generate income for them. So what we've tried to do, and what we are doing, is turning forestry into another type of agricultural production. We allow our partnering landowners to actually gain an income from their forests, which is competitive and we hope outcompetes the value of the cattle pasture that we reforest.
How do you gain an income from a forest?
So
Trying to figure this all out. This is very interesting, Greg.
yes, it's actually a revolutionary aspect of our model that really should be credited to our director, Dr. Barris, where he there's a couple different ways where landowners gain an income. At the outset, we provide a $2,000 grant. So this covers the establishment costs as well as some of the management costs in the early years of the forest. Beyond that, we pay another $2,000 for the capture of the carbon in that forest. So we pay $5 per metric ton that the forest sequesters. We expect our forest to sequester about 40 metric tons per year. So doing the math, that works out to about $200 per hectare per year for the landowner. When we compare this to cattle farming, a well-run cattle ranch gains anywhere between $400 and $500 per hectare per year. So we're a little bit lower than that, but the real gains come a bit later. In order for the forest to remain productive and to continue sequestering carbon over the long term, we need to do periodic thinnings. So removing some of the trees as they get closer and really start to compete and become stressed, we thin lightly to give them more room to grow thicker and produce or sequester more carbon. So these thinnings are necessary for the production of the forest, but also we have logs. And we give those logs to the landowner for sale on the market. And when we add the carbon payments, the establishment grant, and the sale of logs on the market, we estimate that a landowner can make anywhere between $700 to $1,000 per hectare per year. So we're almost doubling what they can gain through cattle ranching.
Is it sort of changing the mindset, though, of the farmers, too? I mean, when they've done cattle ranching for so many years.
Yes.
I mean, that's got to be difficult, too, because in the island thinking, in their thinking.
Absolutely. In some ways, it can be. So we've also addressed that issue, where we work very closely with our partners down there. Our local forester in Costa Rica does not go more than a week without visiting a new farm. He trains the staff on how to manage the forests. We train the owner of the farm to make sure he or she understands everything that they need to do to maintain a healthy forest. So that engagement and very close engagement with our partners is another unique and important part of our model. We don't want anybody to feel like they're on an island. And when they need support, they certainly have it from Reforest the Tropics.
So are the majority, I would assume then, your employees are in Costa Rica?
We run a pretty lean operation right now. There's 3 of us in the office in Mystic. We have a full-time forester in Costa Rica. We have an accountant in Costa Rica, and then we contract additional help as needed. So for instance, when we're doing our seed collecting to stock the nurseries, we'll hire people for the short term.
Is there a particular time, season when planting is better?
In Costa Rica, where we plant, most of the year is suitable for planting. The reason
why
there
is a real rainy season too.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's a great point that you brought up, because not only is there a real rainy season, most importantly, there's a very short dry season where we plant. We focus on what we call the humid tropics, and that is defined by having a dry season of about 3 months or less, 2.5 months in the case of where we plant. Why that is important is when you plant in the humid tropics, it never really gets dry enough where you have to worry about forest fires. This is another issue that's plagued reforestation efforts in the past, is you work for years growing these trees and they can be wiped out in an instant. With our model, that's not a risk that we face because of the land that we target for planting.
Okay. And you had mentioned earlier that one of the bigger organizations you work with is out of Massachusetts. So you're based in Mystic. How far do you go? Do you go across the entire country, or?
Ideally, yes. We, again, as a small organization, we do tend to focus more in the region, with who we target for participation in our program. But we have, through various channels, come into contact with others, and anybody can plan with us, really.
And what is your annual budget? What are we talking here?
Again, as a lean operation, we have an annual budget of $250,000 right now. I'd mentioned that I was recently hired to promote this program and to educate the business world on how effective it can be for them. So we do expect that budget to grow in the near future as we get more projects.
And what is your background in? Are you in a science background or? Because this is all foreign
Sales and
class, so
science.
we were just
Yes,
wondering,
no.
how do you get into?
Luck for me, luck really. My background is more on what I'd call international development. So out of college, I joined the Peace Corps. I spent 2 years in Honduras where I participated in a couple different reforestation projects. I gained a love for both Latin America and for community development work. So I continued, I've worked for 2 years in Belize. I worked a year in Peru. Once I got homesick, I came home and worked for AmeriCorps on an environmental program. And most recently, I was managing about $30 million in grants for Partners in Health, which is an international health nonprofit. I saw this opportunity with Reforest the Tropics, and I jumped on it. It allows me to go to Costa Rica. It's an important issue.
A couple times a year?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Now, when you go, is it a certain time of year that you have to go?
No, it's need based.
Okay.
So as issues come up, and we again because of the importance that we place on the relationship with our partners in Costa Rica, it's also important that we go and talk with them and show them support, and that we're engaged in order to motivate them to stay engaged themselves.
So if Simply Majestic was to invest in offsetting their carbon, could Suzette go down and visit her forest?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean,
And you could take me.
I would take Tricia. We spent a few hours in the forest, and after the bugs and everything, and then we go to the local spa. I mean, that would be about our,
I'm not sure you want to
participation.
leave the forest. It's a beautiful way to spend a day. In fact, each of our donors in each project will have a sign which identifies their project and them as the donor. So there's a lot of publicity for their donors in the forest itself. We've had a number of our donors come down and tour the forests and really be able to benefit by learning directly from Dr. Barris as he explains what is going on in each project that they've supported.
I think you should buy a forest.
Why
Invest in
one?
that.
I mean, what I mean? We could just buy a whole
Hectare.
hectare. It's funny because we in the jewelry industry we talk millimeters and metrics, and so there's always this, another way of measuring. But it was a good question when he even said hectare. I said that's the first time I've heard of that. Not the first time I've heard of it. It was how you measure
Right.
it. So if a business wanted to get involved, how would they get in contact with you? Like you said, this is a good venue, Mystic Matters, and of course through the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce. But how would they get a hold of you?
Well, first they can visit our website, which is reforestthetropics.org. My email is gpowell@reforestthetropics.org, all in one word.
Okay. And you're located right in the heart of Mystic.
Mystic River Park. We are easy to find, so we'd be happy to speak with any interested business.
Okay. That's really great. Well, like I was saying to Tricia when we got the email a couple of days ago, I said, wow, this is an interesting model / concept, but again, something that if a business wants to participate, I think long-term down the road is very rewarding.
I would agree
Okay?
with that.
I mean, I
Yes.
think that's kind of saying it in a nutshell. How'd you like that? We're the biggest participating company. So, Greg, do you have a telephone number or anything too? Because
Yes, I can be reached at 860-572-8199. And again, my email is gpowell@reforestthetropics.org.
And all of that information is also available on our website at mysticchamber.org. You can search for Reforest the Tropics and find all of Greg's information as well.
Well, Greg, thank you very much for coming on and educating Tricia and I, because this is it's a different type of organization, and I'm happy that you were on the show this evening.
Thank you so much. Thank
And
you
come
for
back
having
and
me.
see us again.
Absolutely.
Well, Tricia, getting used to our new studio once again. Thank you and congratulate Frank Ficini. And we are the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce.
We are.
Have a great evening.